say goodbye to doing cold outreach because if we're honest, nobody enjoys doing it. So I built a team of AI agents that can generate you up to 5,000 targeted B2B leads in a single search. It then uses Perplexity to research each lead and their company and craft a personalized icebreaker for them. It then outreaches to them on both LinkedIn and email. And to put the cherry on top, it continues the conversation with each lead as they respond, while having complete context and memory of all the previous messages in the conversation, and it follows your appointment setting process to book calls on your calendar on autopilot, and at the same time it's of course keeping track of every lead inside your CRM, so you don't even have to lift a finger. I know this sounds crazy, so without wasting any time, let's go ahead and give this system a test, and then we're gonna dive inside N8N and we're gonna break down every workflow node by node. Of course, in a real world scenario, we would be able to trigger and manage the system completely through the Telegram bot. However, just for the sake of this example, I'm going to be triggering the system directly on N8N so I can show you the workflow running in real time. I have pinned some data on the trigger. This is an example of a query that this system can take. Give me 100 marketing agency owners in the UAE with more than 10 employees. And keep in mind that it can do up to 5,000 verified leads in a single search. However, it takes about 10 minutes per 100 leads. So I'm not going to do 5,000. We're going to be here all day. Let me just click on test workflow. So right now it started. The first thing it's doing is creating a Google Sheet on my Google Drive. So let me just refresh here. And you can see the sheet being created, 100 marketing agency owners in the UAE. This is where all the leads are going to be stored. And then it also started running the Apollo scraper on Apify, which is what is going to be bringing the leads to us. Now, once it finishes generating all the leads, then it's going to take each lead one by one, is going to do research on them and their company to craft a short paragraph of information about them. And then it's going to use that paragraph in order to craft the icebreaker as well as the first messages for LinkedIn and email. And then it's going to update everything on this sheet right here. Another thing I want to tell you guys, just to save time, I added a limit here and I set the max items to 20. So it's only going to give us 20 leads, even though I asked for 100. But it doesn't matter. In a real world scenario, you can have this up to like 1 million or 5,000. Doesn't really matter. This is just for the sake of this example. So you can see the system running in real time. And it's adding leads on our database inside this Google Sheet. The first lead it added is a person named New Branding. I suppose this is like not their actual last name, although that would be pretty cool. This is their email address. And of course, this is a verified email address. The way the system works, it only provides you with verified emails. So if somebody has an email that is not verified, it's not even going to add the lead here. Here is their LinkedIn URL. And then if I scroll to the right, you can see the short paragraph it created using Perplexity. So this is pretty much additional research on this specific lead. The email icebreaker, the email subject line. This is the email body in HTML format. So it looks all tidy and well written. And then the LinkedIn icebreaker as well as the LinkedIn body. And then of course it's going to go ahead and do this, repeat this process 20 times. Or as high as the number you set on the limit is. So let's give it some time, guys, and then I'll circle back. Now, while the system is running, just because I know a lot of you are going to have this question, the system costs about $100 per month in fixed costs to operate. And of course, you're going to have to pay whatever money you spend on AI credits. But in general, guys, you can be getting 50,000 leads a month. As well as the outreaches for $100 per month or $120 per month. I mean, the API credits are pretty cheap, so this is a very cost-efficient system. And we have also optimized it for quality instead of speed, so that's the reason it's a little slow, because every single workflow has wait nodes that are designed to replicate or imitate how a real human would interact with both email and LinkedIn, just so we can avoid any spam alerts or just so we can keep our account safe pretty much. So it's been a few minutes. It finally generated all the leads for us. And as you can see, it also sent us a message on Telegram. Would you like me to move forward with reaching out to your leads on LinkedIn and email? Now, all we have to do is click on approve and open this link, and then it will continue with the outreach. However, before we do that, let me go back to our sheet on Google Drive, and I'm going to change these ladies or these guys or trans, whatever the fuck he is or she is, email. I'm going to replace it with my email, 123@gmail.com, just so I can properly show you how it can send me the email, how it looks like, and also how it's going to respond to me when I reply to it. So I replace my email with this person's email. And then I'm going to go back to Telegram. I'm going to click on approve, open the link, got it, thanks. And then the system is going to go ahead and is now going to trigger the next workflow, which is responsible for the outreach on email and LinkedIn, and is pretty much going to do it for every single lead that we have generated. So if I go to my email right now, well, I just received a new email. Elevate new branding's efficiency with AI automation. Hi there, really impressed by your work with luxury brands like DFL Limited and Astor Hospitals. Your agency's 360 approach to brand development stands out in the industry, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then would you be open to a 15-minute chat to explore how AI automation could help scale new branding's impressive work while maintaining your high standards of creativity? Now, one thing that you should keep in mind, guys, is that the messages that the system is sending have everything to do with how you have prompted all the agents. And of course, this is what the default prompt that we have is going to get you. But if you have your appointment setting process dialed in or your sales process dialed in, and you know exactly what your first message should look like and what are the next steps, what kind of qualifications you want people to meet before you reach out to them, then of course you can include that inside the prompt, and then the system is just going to replicate your own process. But let's say I'm interested, I'm just going to click here and I'm going to send it to it. Now the system is going to wait a few minutes and then it's going to provide me with a response. And at the same time, guys, while we're waiting, I want to go here to Supabase and I want to show you where all the messages are being stored. So the beauty of this system is that it has memory of each conversation, of all the messages that were exchanged with each lead on both the email platform and the LinkedIn platform. And this is how the agent is able to recall what the lead or the prospect has previously said in the conversation and potentially re-reference it again in the conversation later. So this is I guess the ultimate attempt of trying to make these systems as human-like as possible. And of course, you can see for responses or messages that were sent by the AI, there is the AI type right here. And then for messages that were sent by human, there is the human type right here. So it's very easy for the system to distinguish this is a user's response or this is an actual, my response as an AI. Now, I was also planning to show you how LinkedIn works and how it's able to send messages on LinkedIn and, replicate the same process that it does on email. But unfortunately, I can't do it because I only have one account. My developer sent me his account, but for whatever reason, I can't access it right now. So you're not going to be able to see the system working on LinkedIn, but it does work. We've tested it a bunch of times and it works perfectly fine. Okay, so it just responded back to me on email a couple of minutes ago, and let's click on it. Hi there, thanks for the quick response. I'm thrilled to hear that you're interested in discussing AI automation. Here is a link where you can book in a call, and then it just provided my own calendar link. Of course, you can replace this with your calendar link if you want, and then people can go through and book in an appointment with you. And as I said, guys, what I recommend you do if you're going to be using this system for a real world use case, make sure you have your appointment setting process dialed in and all your SOPs so you can prompt the agent correctly. And that's the only way that is going to be able to generate results for you consistently. But that's pretty much it. Now let's go ahead and dive inside N8N and go through every single workflow node by node. Just before we dive in, I'm going to make this entire blueprint available to you inside my school community so you can download it, start using it yourself, develop it even further, or sell it to your clients for thousands of dollars. You also get access to all my other AI agent templates, courses on N8N that I'm building with the head developer of my agency, courses where I show you step by step how to build a $20,000 per month AI automations agency like I'm doing, live builds, weekly support calls, and a lot more. There is a lot of value and we have a lot of testimonials. So if you're interested, there's going to be a link in the description below. This sales agent is made up of 5 different workflows in N8N, as you can see right here. Let's dive in workflow number 1 and start breaking everything down. So this is pretty much the main workflow for this setup. It's responsible for generating the leads for us using an Apollo scraper on Apify, and it's also responsible for writing the personalized icebreaker as well as the first LinkedIn message and the first email. So this system has 3 different triggers. The first one is an execute workflow trigger, a Telegram trigger, and an internal N8N chat trigger. So the execute workflow trigger is not really configured right now, but this is going to become useful if, for example, you want to delegate this sub workflow to a main agent. Let's say you have a personal assistant agent and you want to give the capability to it to use this workflow and generate leads for you. You can very simply connect it through this trigger right here. Then we have the Telegram trigger, which is what we're using for individual searches or queries. So pretty much on a day-to-day. And then we have this chat N8N trigger that we have used this one for testing and developing the agent. And I think this is good practice. You always want to include this to your workflows. It just makes it easier to build them and test them without you having to constantly use like the third-party trigger that you're going to be using in the real-world case. Now, any input that comes from any of these triggers, we set up as an individual variable, as you can see. And then we combine those variables into one new variable, which is json.text, and that's pretty much going to be the input for our AI agent. Now, this AI agent was a little tricky to set up. All this does, guys, is pretty much generates an Apollo URL that we're going to then use inside the specific Apollo actor that we're going to run on Apify. If you don't know what Apify is, it's pretty much like a developer's platform that allows you to scrape information from the internet using different actors. So the problem was that this actor only takes in as input an Apollo URL instead of taking the different filters. So in a different world, we would be able to just input here this number of leads from this industry, these job titles, this location, and then we'll be able to trigger the actor to run. But in this case, it's taking, or it asks us to provide it with a search URL. So what this agent does right here, it's pretty much prompted to generate a specific URL for the Apollo scraper based on our specific inputs that we want to do a search for. So you can read the prompt right here to generate a direct link for a specific search in Apollo. Follow this format. So first, it's prompted to only get us verified emails. So this is a little line in the URL of an Apollo search. Contact email status v2 equals verified. Then for the job titles, then we have the same for location. So person location equals location, and we replace that with a specific country or city you want to do your search in. Then we have the industry and the keywords, and here is where it gets a little trickier because on Apollo, they don't reference the industry in the URL by the name of the industry. Instead, they're using a specific industry code, which, of course, each industry has its own code. And you can get access to those codes on the Apollo documentation, but the system is only able to get you leads in those 6 niches that we currently have prompted it to be able to. But if you want to do additional searches in, let's say, a niche that isn't included here, for example, real estate, then if you're inside the school, you can just reach out to us and we're going to give you the specific code and you have to update it on your own prompt, or you can just go to Apollo documentation and find this specific code. But this is how the URL looks like, guys. So as you can see, if I'm to zoom in a little bit, you can see the email status is verified. So we're only looking for verified emails. The job title of the person is owner. The location is United Arab Emirates. So the agent is prompted to generate a URL like this one, so we can then use it in the scraper. And you can see it wouldn't be a good prompt without a bunch of different examples. So we give it examples of inputs that the user would potentially ask the agent to generate, and then the example of the correct URL. We give it in total 5 different examples, and then we also give it some instructions on how to customize the links. So replace the job title with the desired job title, replace the location with the desired location, replace the country or the industry code with the desired industry code, replace the number of employees with your desired employee range, auto remove filters as needed. So if you don't include, let's say, a location, it's not going to include it in the URL. You can see here only output the link. My job depends on it. It's a matter of life and death. And then notes, if we don't specify the limit or the number of employees, just use 100. If not specified by the user, do not include a number of employees. And then I also want you to include a query. This is basically the name of the search. By the way, this is not for the number of employees. It's actually the limit of searches it's going to do. So yeah, my bad there. Now let's move on, guys. So this is pretty much what this agent does. It's also using an output parser, because we want to always output our the result from this agent in this specific format. So we want the URL, the query, as well as the limit. And this is the information that is necessary inside the Apollo search. So this is the URL right here in the JSON, and then also the limit, and also the query is actually going to be used as a title for the sheet that we're going to create afterwards. So once the agent generates the URL for Apollo, what we do then is we create a new Google Sheet, which is where we're going to be storing those leads to. So you can see we create an empty sheet using this node, and we name it in the same title as the query from the agent. So 100 marketing agency owners in the UAE. Then we get the headers from an existing template. This is a template. Oops. This is the template right here. And we're pretty much copying the headers from here, and we're pasting them inside the new sheet. And then we're also removing the first row, because for whatever reason, whenever we try to add the headers on the new sheet, it's adding them on both rows, so row 1 and row 2. So we just remove the first row. I don't know exactly why this is happening, but we've tried it. I guess it's some sort of a bug in N8N. So yeah, once we create this Google Sheet where the leads from each search are going to be stored, and also keep in mind that this sheet is going to be, a new sheet is going to be created for every new search. Then we set up the credentials for the Apify actor. So this is the API key from my Apify account. So if I go to my Apify account, I go to settings, API integrations, you can see my API token right here. So just copy this one and paste it here. This is the actor ID. So this is located inside the URL of the specific actor. So GKVEP, and you can see it's the same as this one. And then this is the JSON of the specific actor that you can find by going here and just copying this one and then pasting it inside here. And of course, we replace the total records with our own limit, and we also replace the URL with our own URL that we generated from our agent. So this is pretty much how this works. Once we set up the credentials for the Apify actor, then we make an API call to Apify itself, and we're pretty much asking it to, hey, run this actor for us, please, with these details. And you can see the bearer is the API of our Apify account, and then the JSON is the JSON that we set in the previous node. And then here, where you see the value of the memory is 8192. I'm not sure if this actually works, but what I think this does is it allows Apify to allocate more RAM memory to this specific actor, so it runs quicker than usual. But I'm not exactly sure if it works. I think it does though, because you have to understand, if we're going to ask for 2,000 leads, it's going to be very slow. It's going to take a bunch of time. So by allocating it more RAM, it's able to run quicker. So we run the actor, then we make another API call to Apify, and we're pretty much asking it, hey, did this run that we just did finished? Because if it finished, then we want to retrieve the data. And we specify the run by the data ID, which we get whenever we run the actor. The headers look like this. So again, this is my API key from Apify. Now, sometimes this node, guys, here is going to fail for whatever reason. So it's going to say that the actor run was completed without having actually been completed, and then it's not going to retrieve any data. So we're going to run into an error. For that reason, we have this safety mechanism right here. So once this actor run provides us with a dataset ID, which is pretty much the way Apify references the output of an actor through that ID, then we set that ID as a new variable, and then we make another API call to Apify to get that data. So this is how this looks like. So pretty much we're in Apify datasets, this specific dataset ID, and we want to retrieve that one. And here is how the credentials look like. So the headers, name, value, and again our API key. Now, if this doesn't retrieve any data, it goes into a filter. So if the ID of that run doesn't exist, it's going to try again. It's going to wait for 10 seconds first, and then it's going to try again and again and again until we actually receive something. And then if it does exist, then it's just going to move forward with the rest of our workflow. So once we get the ID of the run, then it means that we have successfully retrieved all the data sets. So then it goes into another filter. And what this filter is asking is pretty much, hey, out of all those leads that we got, only continue with the ones that have an email address, that the status of their email addresses is verified, and that also have a LinkedIn URL. So if we get, let's say, 100 leads, and out of those 100 leads, only 50 of them have all this information, and the other ones are missing either of those, it's only going to output the 50 ones that do have this information. Then it's going to go into a limit. Now, this limit is not really necessary for real world use. We just set it up because it makes testing easier. So we don't have to wait, or we don't have to go through like all the leads. We can just give it a limit, and then this process is only going to run based on the number of the limit that we set here. This is the number of leads that is going to allow to go through. But in a real world case, you can of course like turn this off, or you can even delete it if you want. But anyways, guys, so once the leads go through here, then they go into a loop. So this loop is going to initiate this part of the workflow as many times as there are leads that came through. So pretty much to the extent of this limit, let's say we have 50 leads, is going to loop over 50 times. And then this is what this part does. So this HTTP request makes a post API call to Perplexity. And it's pretty much asking it to, it provides it with a LinkedIn URL of the person, the company name or the name of the organization, as well as the position that person has in that company. And you can see the content here. You're a search specialist. I want you to research a person and give me useful information that can be used for icebreaker in an email. Important, output only the information that the person has without any suggestion. So this is pretty much doing some sort of like additional research on that person. And then, you know, what I found with Perplexity, guys, is that it's more capable than ChatGPT. It's able to access and you know, browse the internet. And also, I did a test with a friend of mine, and we were able to find through Perplexity a YouTube video of his that he had actually unlisted. So for whatever reason, Perplexity was able to get information on that person that no longer existed on the internet, which is kind of strange, but I guess it's a very powerful tool. So yeah, this is what Perplexity does. It provides us with a short paragraph of information on that person and their company. Then that information goes as input to this agent, and this agent is responsible for pretty much receiving the person's name, their profile URL, their company, their position, as well as the output of their Perplexity node. And then you can see the prompt of it right here. So you're a cold outreach specialist. I want you to output an icebreaker first for email and for LinkedIn in separate fields. Only output the icebreaker, nothing else. User research information to create the icebreaker. The icebreaker should be one line. Write it as human and in a simple language. Create the icebreaker in a way that allows for continuation with an offer. Make a LinkedIn icebreaker maximum 180 characters. And guys, a few things to add here. First of all, you can, of course, if you decide to get this template or rebuild it and start using it, you can, of course, provide it with additional edits here or examples. So it's more personalized to how you want to write it, or it falls within the appointment setting framework or your sales process. So that's something you can do. And then the second thing, the reason we're asking it to output the LinkedIn icebreaker in 180 characters max is because whenever you send a connection request on somebody on email, you're allowed to also include a short message, which is 200 characters long if you don't have a paid account. And if you do have a Sales Navigator account, it's 300 characters long. But of course, we also have to account for the name of the person. And in some cases, people have long names. So that's why we say 180 characters instead of 200. Now, as a brain, this agent is using Claude 3.5. As you can see, we just connected to it through Open Router. And the reason we're using Claude 3.5 instead of ChatGPT or any other is because when it comes to conversational AI or AI that LLMs that are able to replicate human-like text or speech, I think Claude is much better than the rest of them. And then it also has a structured output parser because we want to output the email icebreaker as well as the LinkedIn icebreaker in two separate variables or fields. Once we generate the icebreaker for email and LinkedIn, then we generate the first email as well as the first LinkedIn message. And you can see the input of this agent is pretty much the name of the person, their profile URL on LinkedIn, their company, their position, the LinkedIn icebreaker, as well as the information from Perplexity. So a lot of inputs there. And then you can again read this prompt. You're a cold outreach specialist. Your task is to create a personalized email and a personalized LinkedIn message in separate fields. You're selling AI automation services. And again, this is something that you can, of course, edit and adapt to your own company or whatever it is you're doing, or to your own style and character of your brand. So again, structured output parser. So this also generates the subject line for the email, the body for the email. It also generates the body for the first LinkedIn message. So that's very powerful. And here, guys, as you can see, we're using our first beat of code in this system. So this code is very simple. We use ChatGPT to create it, and all it does is it outputs a random number between 0 and 8. And then that is being used as input inside this wait node. So it's going to wait between 0 and 8 seconds before it takes the next step. Now, the reason we want to wait for a few seconds is so we can emulate human behavior. Because the next node, this one, it's making an API call to LinkedIn in order to retrieve the provider ID of the person, which I'm going to explain to you in a bit. But what the wait helps with is, since we're going to be interacting with a LinkedIn API, we want to emulate the way a real human would do it, just as like a safety mechanism to make sure that we don't necessarily trigger any spam algorithms or anything like that. Now, the provider ID is This is a random LinkedIn account that I just pulled up. I think this guy is very popular in like the digital marketing space. He looks like Indian and bald, but this is his public ID. So Neil Patel, it's his name. It's also located in the latter end of his URL on LinkedIn. But as you can see, this is a public ID, which means that this person can change it on his LinkedIn settings and it can say anything. Now, what we want if we're going to be reaching out to people is we want to get their provider ID, which is, best way I can explain it is, it's a stable ID that references each account on LinkedIn. So every LinkedIn account has a public ID and it also has a provider ID. The public ID, you can change it, doesn't really mean anything. It just redirects to your own profile on LinkedIn. And then the provider ID is for the LinkedIn's backend. So for example, if you're doing it through Sales Navigator and you find this person, instead of his public ID here, it's going to populate his provider ID. But anyways, long story short, if we're going to send a message to anybody on LinkedIn, we need their provider ID. And we're pretty much using Unipal for this one. So we are making an API request to Unipal. We send over the profile ID or the profile URL of this person. And Unipal, through this person's public ID, is going to retrieve his provider ID that we're going to need to use later on in the next workflow that I'm going to show you in order to send them a message. This is how this node is configured. So you can see all the parameters here, the name, the value. If you need help setting this up, guys, inside my school community, along with, of course, the blueprint of all those 5 workflows, we're also going to give you a dedicated or specific guide that is going to guide you step by step through how to, obviously connect all the APIs and all that. So yeah, this is what it does. And then it adds all the information inside this sheet that we just created for every single lead. So it goes through the loop, one lead at a time. It goes through this entire process, gets a provider ID, and then it updates it on this sheet right here. So first name, last name, email, as well as a bunch of other information. And this is really like a database of all the leads that we generate. And of course, with every new search, it's going to create a new one. Now, once we finally go through all the leads, guys, then it's going to take the down route of the loop and it's going to go through a limit, which is set to 1. The reason this limit is set to 1 is because without it, we would get as many Google Sheet IDs as there are leads, but that Sheet ID is really the same because they're all stored in the same one. So it's pretty much going to trigger this next workflow as many times as there are leads, but we only want to trigger it once because there is a loop inside that system as well. So this is why the limit exists. Then it's going to go through a Telegram node and it's going to pretty much ask you if you would like to move forward with reaching out to your leads on LinkedIn and email. You can approve it. If you don't approve it, then it's going to, not do anything. And then if you do approve it, it's just going to call the next workflow, which I'm going to dive in right now. Now, the second workflow that we're going to be breaking down is responsible for doing outreach on both LinkedIn and email to our leads. Once this first workflow finishes looping and it goes through the limit, the Telegram approval, it's then going to call this workflow right here. And you can see inside the trigger, we have the spreadsheet ID and the sheet ID. So this is pretty much the information that clarifies to the agent which specific sheet our leads are stored on, because for every new search, it's going to create a new one. And this is why I also said that it's necessary we put a limit here, because without it, we're going to get as many spreadsheet IDs and sheet IDs in this trigger as there are leads in the previous workflow. But it's really not necessary because it's the same ID for everyone. Once we get that information, then we're going to get all the rows through this Google Sheets node in N8N. So we specify the ID as well as the sheet ID, and we're going to retrieve all the rows, and then it's going to loop over every single lead one by one. So the first thing that is going to happen is it's going to send them a LinkedIn connection request or an invite on LinkedIn. And the way LinkedIn works, guys, if you've never done outreach on it before, you first have to almost like follow somebody, like you follow them on Instagram before you can send them a message or before you can conversate with them. Now on N8N, if I click on add node and I go to LinkedIn, you're going to see that there is no native integration for sending a LinkedIn message to somebody. And for that reason, we're using this third-party platform called Unipal. Now this is a whole different process of setting it up, but you have to connect it to your email account as well as your LinkedIn account. For whatever reason, my LinkedIn account is disconnected, so I need to log in again. But you're gonna need to log into your email and LinkedIn, give it access, and then you're gonna need to connect your N8N account through an API call to your Unipal account, and through Unipal you can actually make an API call to LinkedIn. So this is what this HTTP request does right here. So you can see the specific URL, which is Unipal API v1 user invite, no authentication. You can see the headers right here. These are the credentials for your specific Unipal account. The body content type is JSON. And then this is where we need the provider ID that we have gotten in the previous module through this HTTP request using the URL of a person's LinkedIn profile. And I hope you're following me here. So yeah, then we also specify the account ID, which is our account, and then the message, and then the value of that message is of course going to be the icebreaker that we have generated in this previous workflow using the information that we got from Perplexity. So we send a LinkedIn invite request or connection request to somebody. In that we attach the short icebreaker. Then we update a Google Sheet, which is the origin sheet, this one, with the new information, which is that the LinkedIn invitation was sent now. So we add the current date and time. And then we also update the stable sheet, which is the first time we're seeing so far in this entire system. Now we have two different sheets, guys. Pay attention here. So we have the stable sheet, which is the LinkedIn connection tracker. This one, it doesn't change. It's always the same. Every single lead that comes to this part of the process, so every single lead that receives a LinkedIn invitation from us is going to be added on this stable tracker. And then this tracker, which is the origins tracker, or the origin sheet, is different for every search that we do. Now the reason we also want this one that never changes, aside from being updated with new leads, is because this makes our system work. And you're gonna understand exactly how it does that in a bit. But let's go back. So this pretty much updates the stable tracker with the spreadsheet ID, the origin sheet ID, as well as the email of the person and the fact that the LinkedIn invitation was sent. And it also updates it with their first name, their last name, their LinkedIn URL. Now, the reason we are using this is because it allows us to track, how many messages we have exchanged with them on LinkedIn, if they have replied to our email, if we send them an email, if we send them a LinkedIn message, if their LinkedIn invitation was accepted. Because based on those parameters, we can take different actions moving forward. Now, the next thing that happens is we add the icebreaker to our database in Supabase. So we're using Postgres memory here that we can connect to our agents that are later going to be typing the messages that respond to the replies that we get. So that's why we're using this type of memory, because we want to have our agents have complete context of the entire conversation. So yeah, this is an insert operation. Schema public table is the N8N chat histories, and then the session ID is the provider ID of the person. This is how we distinguish which chat is which. And then this is a message, and you can see the type is AI because this is an AI generated message, and every time they respond to us. That is also being stored inside the database, but instead of type AI, it has type human. So yeah, this is what this does. And then we also send them the first email using Unipal again. Now this isn't really necessary to do through Unipal because you can very easily set send an email to somebody through the Gmail node. So if I type send message, we can do it through this one, but since we have used Unipal before, I thought, hey, let's just keep using Unipal for the rest of this build. And you can see the credentials here. So it's a post request. You can see the URL, the headers, and all the details that go into it. So this is a value right here. And then we also add this to the Postgres table as as memory to our agent that this email was sent to this person as well. Now this is on a different table. If you recall, the previous one was called N8N chat histories. This one is called N8N chat histories email. So one stores the LinkedIn conversation, the other one stores the email conversation. And then again, we're using this same combo right here with that generates a random number between 0 and 8, and then it inserts it inside the wait node, so it doesn't appear like it's robotic. And we want to emulate human behavior as much as possible to just stay not initiate any red alarms from the algorithms. So this is the third workflow, and what this workflow does is it pretty much checks whenever the LinkedIn request or invitation that we sent to a person was accepted, and then it sends the first message to them. So the way we've configured this system, the icebreaker is being used inside the initial invitation request on LinkedIn, that short line of text, less than 180 characters. And then the first message that we send on LinkedIn, it's a separate thing. It's not the same as the icebreaker. So whenever somebody accepts our request on LinkedIn, this webhook right here gets triggered. And the way it gets triggered is again through Unipal. So we have set this LinkedIn webhook on Unipal, so it knows that every time our request is being accepted, then it triggers it. It gets the information of the person from the stable sheet, so it knows which person accepted our request. And then if that person didn't also provide a message, so he didn't respond to our icebreaker message, so the number of messages on LinkedIn is equal to 0, then it goes ahead, it updates the LinkedIn connections tracker. Again, this is the stable one, so this is the correct one right here. And it adds the LinkedIn provider ID, and it says, or it updates the LinkedIn invitation as accepted. So it says yes here. And then we're using a randomizer, same logic as before. We get the first message from the previous sheet, so the origin sheet where we stored it right here somewhere. So somewhere it should say, first message. Here it is. So, yep. So we take it from here, and then we populate it inside this node, and then we send it to that person on LinkedIn, as a new message. So pretty much all this does, guys, is if somebody approves our LinkedIn request and they don't respond to our initial icebreaker message, then it's going to go through this process. It's going to add the first message inside our Postgres memory, and then it's going to update the number of messages that took place with that person inside the stable Google Sheet. So it's going to say now 1 because we just sent them the first message. It should actually say 2 because they also received our icebreaker, but it still works. So this is workflow number 4. As you can see from the title, it responds to our leads on LinkedIn every time they reply to our previous message. What triggers this workflow is a webhook. Now the webhook was created on Unipal, and Unipal is connected to my LinkedIn account, and my N8N account is connected to Unipal. So every time we get a message on LinkedIn, this webhook right here is going to trigger Unipal, and Unipal is going to trigger our N8N workflow. I'm not going to cover specifically how to set up this webhook, guys. I mean, if you know a little bit about it, you can do it based on what you're seeing. But if you want detailed instructions, they're going to be located in the automation templates. If you decide to join my school, they're going to be clear instructions that you can follow. So yeah, this webhook triggers the workflow. Then we get the person's provider ID from the stable connections tracker. And then we set this condition here. So if the number of messages is greater than or equal to 1, and if the provider ID of the person that we got from the sheet is the same as the one that we got from the webhook, only then continue. And the reason we set this second condition here, guys, is because the webhooks from Unipal, for whatever reason, are going to trigger whenever you receive a message, but they'll also trigger when you send a message. So we only want the system to be triggered when we receive a message. Otherwise, we're going to be chatting with ourselves in somebody else's chat pretty much, and we don't want that. So what happens then is we get all the details from the origin sheet ID about that specific lead. And then that information goes into an AI agent that has as input the received text that we got from this person through the webhook. And you can see the prompt right here. You're a professional LinkedIn outreach assistant. Your goal is to respond to recipients who have replied to your initial message, engage in a meaningful conversation to understand their situation, and encourage them to book a call using the provider calendar link. Follow these guidelines, and you can see acknowledge, ask open-ended questions, provide value, suggest a call, be professional and friendly. And of course, guys, this process, as well as the links, that you can replace with whatever your own process is. Of course, this is going to be to a large extent what makes or breaks your system. So you want to make sure you have a really good process in place that if it works in the real world, it's going to also work when you have an AI agent do it. So if you have like your own SOP for appointment setting or the script that you use for outreach, then this is something that you can use right here. What I recommend you do is you're kind of like short, straight to the point, because nowadays people, they don't have too big attention span. So you want to make sure that you tell them how or in what way you can add value. And then from there, the people that are interested, if you write your copy well, of course, they're just going to tell you, hey, I'm interested. And then from there, you can take the next step. Now, this model is using GPT-4o Mini. We could have also used Claude 3.5 for this one, because it's going to be, writing in a way that is connecting to a real human. But it is what it is. This still works. And then it also saves the message inside the specific table for LinkedIn messages on Supabase. Then this logic, we've seen it before, generates a random number to wait a few seconds before it sends the message. Then it sends the message through Unipal API to the specific person on LinkedIn. This is, of course, the person's provider ID, and then this is the output of our agent. This line of code, guys, don't let it intimidate you. All it does is it pretty much takes the current number of messages that we have exchanged with a person that we received from the previous sheet right here, and then it adds 1 to that number, whatever that number is. So if it's 2 messages, it's going to add 1, it's going to be 3, and then it's pretty much going to update the same sheet that we retrieved that information from with a new number. You don't even have to do it through a code node. You can do it through an LLM node. Will still work fine. Just code is like more predictable, of course, and is always going to work pretty much if you do it right. So yeah, guys, this is what this workflow does. So I'm just going to save it. Now let's go have a look at the last one. This is the respond to emails workflow. Again, same logic. Whenever somebody responds to us on email, it's going to analyze their response. It's going to generate a message and it's going to reply to them according to the criteria that you have set in your agent. The webhook is the same, so it's still being triggered through Unipal. Then we get the person from the sheet. So we're looking at the email column and we're searching to match the same email as this one. So this is a filter we have right here. So pretty much the webhook is gonna send us the email address of the person, and then we want to match it with the one that we got from the webhook. Then we read the information of that person. So this is the origin sheet. So the origin sheet ID and the specific sheet on that Google sheet where all the information is located. And then we take that data and we put it inside our AI agent right here. So this is the response of the user. This is the subject line that, of course, we have generated on the initial workflow and we stored inside the origin sheet. And then our agent, if it ever opens, takes it as input. And then this prompt is very similar. It can maybe even be the exact same prompt as the one that we have used for LinkedIn. So yeah, just make sure you change this to whatever your own process is, guys, okay? Because that's really what is going to make your system work or not work. And here we're using, we should actually use 3.5 Sonnet, Anthropic, Claude 3.5, this one. So this one is going to be the ideal one for a human-like conversation. And if you're wondering why we're connected through Open Router, just because it allows us to test a bunch of different LLMs very quickly without, having to connect a bunch of different APIs. Then it saves the message of the person inside the specific table on Supabase, so we can use it as memory. And then it outputs its answer in a specific way. So subject line, and then whatever, hey John, thanks for getting back to me. The same logic here. And then of course we have the Unipal API request that sends them an email. So guys, if you understand the basics of this build, the rest of it is really just repeating the same process again and again. It's not that complex. But yeah, this was the system. It's able to find leads for you, enrich them, outreach to them, handle the conversations, and follow your appointment setting process to book calls with you. And at the same time, is keeping track of everything inside your Google Sheet. And then if you want access to this template, guys, I'm going to leave it inside my school community. You get a bunch of other goodies as well. And if you want to work with me directly one-on-one, you can book in a free consultation using the link below. With that being said, I'm going to see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.